Hi, I'm Sara Siestreem. I'm a Hanis Coos tribal member, artist, and educator. It's a huge honor to be part of this gallery and to be sharing our first show with you. These are process-based paintings. I don't start with an image in mind, I start with an emotion and action. I have graphite or drawing utensils and I have paint. So the paint refers to water and geology, how those elements work together, and the graphite is the animal body, me. So the end of my drawing implement or the end of my brush is a track of my physical body. So I'm the natural being interacting with a natural system, hoping that some event from nature, some new being will emerge through that combination. In this painting, Before You Arrived, I'm speaking to time before my time on the planet, ancestral time, and the ancestral beings who dreamt us all into existence. So that's kind of the foundation of my arts practice, is paintings that look a lot like this. I've got the baskets I make with natural materials. These are baskets that I wove trying to get to our original basket forms. Then I have begun to work with other technologies and other collaborative sources. One of the things that immediately started happening when I started pursuing weaving was this desire from the public to buy the baskets, which was really challenging because the market also didn't understand the value culturally, just time and money, all the materials and everything it takes to make them. And so I wasn't ever able to directly satisfy that desire. I've been fantasizing a way of multiplying the baskets that is sustainable. And I had a fellowship at the U of O. They had a world-class 3D printing technology, and so I started working with Kazi, who is a Bangladeshi artist. We started to multiply the baskets here. It provided us with something that can be produced that's plastic, but that's really flexible, which could get me to a more beautiful and sumptuous material. But we probably don't need a whole lot more plastic on the planet. But it brought us to me being able to collaborate with Brett Binford, who's a ceramics artist, and give him something that he could make molds out of that wouldn't destroy the basket. I explained to him how precious the materials were and destroyed his ability to make the thing because he couldn't bear the fact that it would ruin the basket for him to make a mold of it. So 3 years go by, a pandemic happened, and then I meet Kazi, and we make this. Brett was then able to make molds, and now we can come to ceramics, which brings me in touch with the earth. So there's a elemental full circle here that starts to happen. So the two objects I chose to work with Kazi on were this clam basket and then this dance cap. It's for a girl called Aretha Franklin reigns supreme. So you wear these, it's like a tuxedo or a crown or any kind of accoutrement that you wear to signify royalty or status. I grew up with Soul Train and Solid Gold, and Aretha Franklin, of course, is the queen of a lot of that. She was really significant to me, and so I made this cap when she passed on to say thank you to her, to acknowledge her contribution to my life. This piece is called Fastened to the Rock, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. I'm at a really exciting point in my career as a painter because I now have hard-edged geometric basket patterns that I can work with. When I was at Pratt, I was the only Native student that was identified at that time at that place. One of my teachers said, well, if you want us to know it's Indian, are you going to put a teepee on it? Which is racist and totally offensive. But what they were kind of getting at is that the work that I was making, this abstract gestural work, didn't smack of indigenous property that people are accustomed to seeing. At that time, I wasn't using the hard-edged geometrics. While they're so powerful and culturally identifiable, it didn't feel appropriate to me because I could not weave them and because I didn't know what they meant. Just because my tribe recognized me and I was raised in the culture, it didn't feel like I could just take that thing. Now I can weave these patterns, or at least I'm learning to weave them. And I have done enough to have at least the beginning privilege to bring these patterns into the work. So the pattern here is called fastened to the rock. And we know this because we have notes of interviews from weavers in the 1850s who worked with different anthropologists to record some of our cultural knowledge. For the basket patterns, we have a list of tribal words and drawings that are sometimes connected to baskets that we know of. Fastened to the rock, I believe, indicates the mussels that grow on the rocks at the coast, so mollusks. There's a Xerox transfer that gives you that information in the work. I was able to, at the U of O, take many of my ancestral objects, these dance caps, this little berry basket, and a few others, into the Xerox machine there and create ceremony in it. I brought my regalia, earrings the Asian tail made for me as a Cherokee friend of mine, and some sweetgrass, and do ceremony with these ancestor baskets by making art with them. I have a very controlled palette. When I am using red, I'm talking about joy and passion and indigeneity and power and blood and all of the things that unite us all. When I think about this color, this green, I think about my dad's Chevy. I think about the color of the ocean. This is the color of roller skating and all the things from my time growing up. When I couple the red and the green, depending on how notched up they are, they vibrate. And it becomes almost impossible to see them. The vacillation that happens between them is your eye trying to understand it. So it's a physical sensation it creates. This green is used in mental institutions, medical wards, in war. It is used because in a highly traumatic state, fresh blood on that, for some folks when they're traumatized, they don't see it anymore, so it can lessen the trauma that they're experiencing. So when I'm talking about supercharged stuff, I oftentimes will put these two colors together in order to care for the viewer. I'm talking about these objects of our cultural ancestry who still contain all of this knowledge that we need, that we can't get to, and they're being held captive in these institutions. And they long for us too. And the way that they got there is usually pretty screwed up. When I use this fluorescent yellow, I am pointing to things that are really negative. These are the ones with the styrofoam with the mollusks on them. This one I'm wearing the gloves and I'm holding my head and I've got a headache. This piece is intentionally really charged, but I'm using all of these things together to try to write a line in history, bring these ideas into the awareness of the viewer, and to help charge up that sense of moral responsibility that we all carry so that folks can ask themselves, well, what do you have power over? What can you affect? This piece is called Minion, Four-Legged Spider. It's the Aretha caps. The thread here is cotton dyed with indigo, given to me by Dakota Mace, who is a Dene artist. These red beads are Czech, and you see them all through indigenous regalia. They're in the Aretha Franklin caps, the real one too. And in our ancient regalia that's kept down at Berkeley, there's a little bag that has those set up that way. And I'd made this before I saw it, so that was a good thing to know that I was doing right by how we put things together. So I decided to make the tendrils with the glass beads the same red. This is the dentellum, which you saw in the earlier piece too. We call that Indian money, but it's about cultural currency as opposed to land dollars. It's always been a trade item, but we use it in our regalia, so it indicates status and beauty. Other elements in here are salmon vertebrae. Coos people are salmon people, as most people in this region consider themselves to be. This means that we are related to the salmon, and we use them as a metaphor for how you live your life. In the weaving program that I ran for 5 years for my people, I would also cook a fish so that we would be with that part of our culture. So I would save the vertebrae, and so they're in here. People in this region speak to the ancestors who are around you all the time, and this color red and abalone are perceivable to the ancestors who are in you and around you all the time. I'm asking the ancestors to be with us, and I'm recognizing them. There's the red and green, so in here is that seafoam green. There is an indication of red, white, and blue to speak directly to America. Up in there, There's a woven piece that holds the tendrils together, and I wove that with cotton, and I dyed it with indigo. These are avenging minions. They're protecting minions. Everywhere they go, they're beautiful and they're sumptuous, but they're also watching, and they are standing and holding that space. When I say four-legged spider, that's supposed to be scary. I love spiders. The spider is really an important animal in the history of weaving and human consciousness. A spider with 8 legs is normal. If it only had 4, it would have got hurt really bad, right? And so it's pissed. How dangerous something when it's hurt is. If I'm thinking in terms of a supernatural being to protect everybody, then I would be upping the ante with going to 4. A lot of cultures use plant medicine. We all do. That's a universal human thing. Part of that is the plants that grow on their own, and part of that is the plants that we grow ourselves. One of the things that I work with a lot is sweetgrass. It is a cultivated plant in this part of the country, and I've been growing it for many years. And this last year, we had the longest, wettest, coldest spring that any of us really can remember, which meant not great tomatoes, but the sweetgrass went bonkers. The first batch that I cut, which was this, I braided it too soon. It wanted a few more days to dry out. It's kind of rotten. It's speckled in a way that is not primo. So I just tied them up in these 2 hunks, and I put them on the wall. They sat on my wall for quite a while. This other narrative started to emerge in my imagination. The US government had 3 big promises to us. You get a place to live, you get an education, you get health care. We don't all get free college, that's a racist notion. But they did, for a long, long time, take most of our young children and put them in missionary schools. When the children would get there, they would cut off their braids. Our hair is spiritually significant. It is a connection to the ancestors and the spirit world. It contains all of your life experiences. And to cut that off, it's an identity crisis. It's super violent. We're starting to find out when children would die, and they were dying in tremendous numbers in these places, they were put in mass graves, unmarked, and they're starting to find the babies' bodies now. This took on another meaning to me in my studio. It to me looked like hunks of these braids. Baby's breath is a memorial. It's a way to create a ceremony, a funeral in this space to acknowledge the awareness that's happening right now so that we can make sure we don't do these kinds of things anymore. This room is about that kind of ceremony, about acknowledging it and figuring out what we can do. We make art to save lives. So when you go back through the other room and you're in the medicine room and get inspired and excited about what you can make with your own body, the nature that you contain, the hope there is that as you then go out to the next part and out into the world outside of this place, that some of that kind of recognition and challenge and love that I'm trying to give to you will add up to something for you to deal with that reality, and also for the place in the world that you go to affect. So that's what that one's about.